you cannot live to your highest self if you do not do the work. And a lot of people say like live unapologetically, live authentically. Like I truly believe that's how you can live your most elevated like life and live up to your highest self. But I think it's one of the hardest things to do. I think it's very easy to say and very, very hard to do. You need to be able to address your triggers and actually work through them. You can't just like talk about it and then expect everything to change. And so I think for me, like a huge part of my healing and stepping into my power was realizing that, you know, you can have all of these triggers, like all of them, and do the work and address every single trauma you had in your life. But doing that doesn't make the triggers go away. It's just like context for how to deal with the triggers. And that can be a harsh reality to face.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Triggered AF podcast, where with raw honesty and some unfiltered conversations, we are definitely the number one place to not only explore the triggers that shape our lives, but also to work on overcoming them. So get ready to laugh, cry, and discover something new about yourself. You can keep spiraling or you can deal with your triggers. It truly is your choice. But I have a feeling if you're here with us today, it just might mean that you're ready to deal with yours. So let's tap right on in.
Yes, I'm so excited for this conversation. I feel like we've had this conversation in pieces throughout the years, years of our podcast. Okay. The over 100 episodes, that we've had. Okay. I can't wait till we say the hundreds of episodes, but we are definitely trucking along and hitting milestones. But we've had this conversation in pieces, but it was definitely time to kind of put it all together, just to have the impact. And I'm really excited just to talk about what it means to overcome powerlessness, especially in today's society, especially still reeling years later from COVID. There are wars going on in the world. There are ships crashing into bridges. There are natural disasters. Wasn't there like an earthquake the other day? Like
there was an earthquake
in like New York or something. Like just, you know, a lot is happening. And it's just important for us to try to tap into our power, even in our lowest moments. So I'm really interested to see what are some ways that we can help people, you know, figure that out so that we can kind of go about things in a more bold way.
Absolutely. And today's guest, I actually had the pleasure of joining her at her 1 year, I believe, anniversary or season 1 anniversary of her podcast, How I See It. And we have the host herself, How Han Sees It. I'm super excited to have Huante here with us today. She is a content creator and the host of How I See It, the podcast. You all are in for a treat. So get your pen and paper ready because we are about to go in. Now, y'all already know we do not believe in just talking about our triggers without actually providing some tools to help you overcome them. So get ready. We're about to dive in.
Hi, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you feeling today? I know you're joining us from sunny San Diego, but now I hear a little bit chilly San Diego.
Chilly, sunny. She's very toxic. She just gives multiple vibes all the time. The sun will be out and we'll be shivering, but I'm so happy to be here. And I'm so glad I got to meet you at the dinner, Alicia. It was so awesome just to have you there.
Yes, I had such a good time. And I'm a firm believer. So I'm a girl's girl. So I love when I meet other women who are also girls.
Totally.
Because the energy was just so good. The people were amazing. You were absolutely stunning. And just your words of, you know, all that you've done in getting to this point, because people think, oh, podcasting is easy and everybody has a podcast. And it's like,
There are levels to podcasting. And until you really get in there, you don't realize it. And it's like, as you're going along, like, why is this not easy? Like, I thought this was a hobby. I thought that, like, you know, everybody's doing it, so it can't be that hard. And then you start to realize like all the moving parts, and takes so much time and dedication to do podcasting at a certain level. So, you know,
totally.
Yeah. It's always nice to talk to a fellow podcaster who's like really trying to do it the right way.
For sure. And I think that especially when you get into, I think anything in social media or starting a business, the podcast, like you have to really lead with mission and have like a true purpose, because when you get in
Yes.
there and it's like chaos, like that is the only thing keeping you going. It's not the
Oh,
sleep
Yes.
that you're getting because you're not getting any.
right.
And it's like, it's not anything except for a purpose. And I think that's what I was talking about at the dinner. And I love that we're talking about, stepping into your power today, because I feel like that is what drives my podcast. And it's obvious that it drives yours as well.
Yeah. So one of our questions that's the only question that we ask all of our guests. It's like our initiation to the podcast
Love that.
conversation question. So outside of all the titles and accolades and things that you do and things that you've accomplished, who do you say that you are at your core?
Oh, that's such a good question. I would just say like I'm just like a girl. I'm just a woman who's like out here just trying to do life in the most unapologetic, authentic way possible. And I think that sometimes like the social media and the podcasting and the content creation can make it seem like myself or other creators are more than that. And I think the goal of How Han Sees It and the podcast has always just been to show who I am at my core, which is just like a girl trying to figure it out and like dedicated to doing the work necessary to live at my most elevated self. Yeah, I would say like that's who I am at my core.
Ooh, I love that. Especially there was a quote that we read a while back, Danny. And I think it was, who was the author? Basically, the best thing, if you can be in life, which is yourself, and you've kind of done the best thing ever. I don't remember who. I think it was Waldo Ralph Emerson. That is
Ooh,
who it was. And Danny said that she doesn't believe that that is the best thing in life. She says it's being your best self, not just being yourself. And you just said that same thing, like living your most authentic and being your highest or your most elevated self. That piece there is the game changer. And that's where I do think a lot of folks miss it, because with everything that is happening, that powerless feeling, it can make you feel like you're so defeated. So can you like kind of tap us all the way into your world, and share like a time where you felt truly powerless, and then what were some of the like steps or ways in which you were able to take to actually work through those feelings?
oh my gosh, that's such a huge question. I feel like,
I know.
so to your point, like, I think that a lot of people say, like, live unapologetically, live authentically. Like, I
Mhm,
truly believe that's how you can live your most elevated, like, life and live up to your
mhm.
highest self. But I think it's one of the hardest things to do. I think it's very easy to say and very, very hard to do. And I think in my, my philosophy for life and just like what I talk about on the podcast is like, you cannot live to your highest self if you do not do the work. And to your guys'
Mm,
podcast, like you need to be able to address your triggers and actually work through them. You can't just like talk about it and then expect everything to change. And so I
yeah.
think for me, like a huge part of my healing and stepping into my power was realizing that, you can have all of these triggers, like all of them, and do the work and address every single trauma you had in your life. But
Mhm.
doing that doesn't make the triggers go away. It's just like context for how to deal with the triggers. And that can
Yes.
be a harsh reality to face. It's very frustrating, it's
Yeah.
hard. You're like, I put in so much work. It's so exhausting having to like revisit all these moments of powerlessness. But
Mhm.
I think in the moment you realize like, these triggers may never go away. It's all about the way you respond. And I think it's the hardest. It's probably in my opinion, the hardest thing to deal with. It's the hardest thing to be able to flex those different reactions. But to go back to moments, I mean, let me go back to childhood. Like I feel there's so many moments like in our lives, especially as women, where we're made
Mhm.
to feel powerless. Like I could go
Absolutely.
down like a whole list of things that have happened. Like I grew up in a very chaotic home, like love my parents. I was very supported, but like they were very unhealed people, like didn't do the work.
Yep.
Love them, but
It
is what
is
it
what
is.
it is.
So really chaotic house, like a lot of, low self-worth issues, a lot of
Yeah.
depression and anxiety developed. I felt extremely powerless and unheard, growing up as a teenager through high school. That depression and anxiety took me through college and like subconsciously creating how I see it and how Han sees it. It's just so funny because in the moment I didn't even think like, wow, like I don't really feel seen. I don't really feel heard. And now
Mm.
I'm starting something called How Han Sees It and like
Yeah.
preaching about being unapologetic. And I think
Yeah.
in the beginning, I didn't realize exactly what was happening. But as I
Mhm.
continue to like pursue healing and look in the mirror and really like look at myself, I realized like the kind of that beautiful harmony that was happening. And
Yeah.
so I think even, more as women, we face so many moments of powerlessness. Like I can think of so many instances in relationships. I can think of moments in college where I was treated poorly by, friends, teachers, men. There are like moments of rejection. I think we all have these moments.
Mhm.
And a lot of times we sit in our powerlessness because it can be really hard to take the steps necessary to look in the mirror and deal with, the trauma and triggers we've faced.
Dating isn't trash, but how you date absolutely can be. For so many of us, we're dating people who we don't really like and who don't like us. We focus so much on being chosen that we don't take the time to actually honor our own wants, needs, and desires. We created the What Type of Dater Are You quiz that not only shows you what type of dater you are, but also shows you where to find your type. Are you a cautious clam? Are you a spontaneous stimulator? Or are you a luxury loving hot ticket? Take the quiz to find out now and gain invaluable insights into your dating preferences at datingwellaf.com.
Yeah, because it's so much easier to be like, oh, well, I can't do anything about this. And so it's kind of like vindication. Like,
Yeah.
I get to be my lowest vibrational self. I get to act out. I get to do all the things because I deserve, because this situation happened. This experience was really shitty. And so now I can just throw caution to the wind and do whatever I want to do. And it's kind of
Yeah.
like, no,
Yeah, no, and that feels like I think we trick ourselves into thinking that feels good.
of
And like that
course.
that's the easier way. I think
Yeah.
it's so hard like especially for me like I was so down low, like so depressed, I was so anxious. It's all I knew. I didn't even know like the a feeling of better. And so I think it can be really scary to like look in the mirror and be like, okay, like all of these moments of powerlessness that I felt weren't my fault, but now it's in my power to like respond differently. And that realization hurts when you realize like a lot of the behaviors and instances in your life that are going wrong are actually kind of your fault, even though the root of it may be not.
That accountability piece is where a lot of us want to look the other way because it is ugly. Alicia and I were literally just having that conversation yesterday, I think, around how important it
Yeah.
is to tell yourself the truth
Ugh, hard.
and be honest with just who you are. And we started talking about it because I had one of those Facebook memories pop up. And there's like a meme that's just like, I have the least in common with myself and my Facebook post from 10 years ago.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
and you read some of them like, why was I typing like this? Like, why was I writing like this? Like, who is that person? Because I don't know her. But
Oh,
one of them came up from like 8 years ago that I was like, okay, young Danny was on her way. And I said something like, my ability to tell myself the truth will continue to keep me sane.
oh,
And
that's so good.
I was just like, okay, like, all right. And it just hit me so hard again now because when you're trying to heal and you're on this journey and you've been on it for some time, you can get to a place where you feel like you start to plateau and then you also get arrogant. So
Mm,
Mhm.
it's so interesting that this came back full circle because it is one of those things that unless you're willing to take the accountability, you're always going to be the victim.
totally.
If you're
That's
the
so good.
victim, you're never going to take the responsibility to do something about it because you're
Yeah.
waiting for someone to save you. That's what the victim
Yeah.
is. That's what the damsel in distress is. You want someone to come and fix it. And if you're always in victim mode, you don't have any power because you've given it to somebody else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is so good because I think that a huge, symptom of losing your power, whether it
Mhm.
was like you were in an abusive relationship, you had a toxic childhood,
Yeah.
were assaulted, whatever it is, big or small, like in those
Mhm.
moments, you just want to be saved. Like you do.
Yes.
And it's sad. Like it's
Come
so
save me.
hard to realize that no one is coming to save you. I was saying this in an interview the other day. Am I allowed to cuss? I'm
Hell
like,
yeah, we cuss all the time. You're fine.
I
Yes.
was saying in an interview the other day that, like, in the most respectful way possible, like, no one gives a fuck about you. Like, and like realizing that is so hard, but also like liberating, because it's like it's no one's responsibility to like be like, are you okay? Like, you know, of course the people in our lives, but like our friends. But I think a lot of times you're walking through life, whether it's with like depression on your back, anxiety, PTSD, whatever it is, and we're all just like, everyone's moving around in this life and no one cares about me. And like, no, everyone's doing their thing. And it's like, yeah, they are. They
They
are.
are. And they have to. In order for them to survive this experience too, they have to move around the cabin. And it's not
Yeah.
that, like, do you know how much energy it takes for someone to manage themselves and also manage someone else?
Totally.
It's not to say that they don't want to care. I know if they're and I know normal is subjective, but if they are just a standardized, we'll use that word, they're a standardized human. Yes, they care, but it does not mean that they can do anything about you and them and maybe the other responsibilities that they have. So you will have to save yourself. And I agree, that realization, it kind of pissed me off a little bit once I realized, what you mean no one's coming?
No
Yeah.
one.
I'm a good
Well,
person.
I think it's much easier if someone can do the work for us. I
Of
mean, how
course.
amazing would that be? You like get to like not have to look in the mirror and just have someone come over and be like, this is how you're going to feel better. You actually don't have to be real with yourself at all.
Yeah, this get Delulu.
Yeah,
Get in your delusional state, and you will be okay. And a lot of times that's what we're doing. We're numbing, we're diverting, we're projecting, we're just doing everything but dealing with our own shit. And a lot of times it does lead to our own sense of feeling like there's nothing you can do. And that helplessness just gets you to spiral. So I wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit about how or in what ways do you begin to learn to kind of find your power in situations that you feel hopeless? Like how do you start to realize like, oh no, I can lean on that, or I can pull this from my personality, or I can turn my trauma into triumph like this. Like, what are some ways that you learn to kind of tap into your power even in times that you just felt like your hands were tied?
yeah. I feel like there's so many like negative feelings along the healing journey. And I think like we obviously are all very passionate about doing the work. And I think not enough people in this space talk about like how shitty it is sometimes. Like
Yeah.
it's not fun.
It
Uh,
feels so bad.
it feels bad. It feels good helicopter. And like, I'm
Yes.
so thankful, but it's really hard. And I think there's like multiple, we'll say triggers that happen like as the healing journey continues. And sadly, newsflash, the healing journey never stops. So,
Never, ever,
yeah,
ever.
which sucks. But like, I think to your point, I think there's like a healing journey, like honeymoon that happens. So like, I feel like there's, at least for me in my own, healing journey, like I hit this like rock bottom with my depression and anxiety where I was just like, I literally do not want to live right now. I'm miserable. It cannot get much worse than this. Like, I might as well just try. And I think I had this like deep inner knowing that like I was meant for more. I was like, I can't, this like can't be life. Like, I'm like, I know I'm smart. I know I'm capable. And like, this is ridiculous, essentially. And so I got myself into therapy. And like for 3.5 years, it was like this intense work. And it happened to coincide with COVID. So like, I kind of feel like I had this like, I guess blessing in a way where I got to like really dive into this like almost mental rehab where I could like give everything to my healing. So I would call that like my major first 360. So like after that, to your point, Danny, I think there's like a honeymoon phase that happens where you think you've done all the work and you haven't had like the hard realization.
Elevated.
Yes. You're a little like, wow, I feel great. And that's amazing. But I think you think your work is done. And so I think the first moment of powerlessness always really sucks. And I think that in those moments when because it continues to happen all the time for me, where you're like, I thought I worked through this. Like I've put in so much work. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I don't keep going. I think in those moments, I try to think about like, all of the things that like I've done to like achieve healing and take back my power. I think that we can get really stuck in everything, not only just going wrong, but like the places that we haven't healed or the new things that are showing up. And I think just a reminder of like, wow, like that's where I was 3 years ago. Or to your point, like you see a Facebook post and you're like, oh my gosh, like I can't even believe I shared that. Like I'm so different. I think that is a great way to like kind of ground yourself and keep pushing
Mhm.
through because it doesn't feel good. And then I think another thing that comes with healing is like the shame that you
Oh,
feel
A lot
for
of shame.
oh my gosh, so much shame for like the past
yeah.
reactions you've had to your triggers. Like
Oh,
perfect
yeah.
example. I was out at a bar like a year ago and I was sitting with my brother. He was like in town. We were hanging out and this guy behind me like tapped me and was like, "Can I see the menu?" I turned around and it was my ex-boyfriend, like pre-therapy. And I was so ashamed. Like I hated that like he knew me as someone that like I didn't identify with at
Mm,
all anymore.
that's a thing. That's a real
Yeah.
thing.
It's
Yes.
so embarrassing. Like I literally got like I was like, "Oh my God, hi." And he was like, "Hi." And it was fine. But like I was remembering like this version of myself who was like yelling, throwing a drink out the window because I was upset and couldn't handle my fucking nervous system, who was like reacting so poorly to situations, horrible at communication. Like
Yeah.
it was this flash of like, oh my God, I'm so
Yeah.
ashamed that this
Yeah.
person doesn't know the new me. And
Yeah.
instead of being like proud of myself, like, wow, you've
Mhm.
come a long way, I went home and totally spiraled. And I was like, I'm so embarrassed. Like, I'm so embarrassed. And this person has like no relevance in my life whatsoever. Like, great guy. I'm sure he's grown up too. But like, it was just
Mhm.
this moment where I had to acknowledge the shame and like acknowledge the
Mhm.
past. And again, to our point, look in the mirror.
Yes.
And in that moment, I was just like, it's okay. Like, and I think we have a
Yeah.
hard time, especially when we've been through like situations that have made us feel powerless, like allowing ourselves to have grace. And I can't
Yes.
really like give like a tip for how to do that to yourself. I think it's just something we have to allow ourselves to do. Like we have to have enough love
Totally.
for ourselves to do it. And I just
Mhm.
tell people like me and my best friend always say, like, just remove the charge. You just gotta let it roll off. Like it's fine. Like remove the
Yeah.
charge.
It doesn't count.
I
It
like
doesn't
that.
count.
I love that.
Alicia and I say that, but in a very different context.
The context that we say it in is for bad sexual partners. But I love that we're applying it to the
See,
other parts
healing.
of
I
your
like
life.
that. I like the evolution of that term.
Listen, I'm
It
going to
don't
use
count.
that
It don't
now.
count. It just
Like,
don't count. It don't count.
it doesn't count. It just kind of like with your credit, where people feel like, oh my God, I've butchered my credit. I've messed it up. I can never do some of these things again. It's like even the little credit card companies let you after 7 years. They be like, you know what? I'm going to give you another chance.
Well, it's
I'm
more
gonna,
so like I think our triggers like create like serious charge for things that like really aren't a big deal. And I think that's a separate
Yes.
conversation. But like,
Yes.
so me and my best friend will always keep each other accountable. And we're like, just remove the
Mhm.
charge. Like, this is, you're charging something that's like based in shame. It's based in like, trigger about like what's happened in the past. Like you think this is a
Yeah.
big deal. And like, I don't think it is. And I think removing that charge with everything, like you're going to feel shame. You're going to feel hopeless. You're going to feel so fucking frustrated that you have to keep doing the
Mhm.
work. But you just have to try
Yeah.
to remove as much as you can the charge and just accept. There's acceptance too, that like, this is just life.
Exactly.
Like it's the human
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. And somehow, while removing the charge, owning whatever role you played, giving yourself the grace, forgiving
Yeah.
yourself, and just moving forward in an effort to be better, do better the next time. You know who inspires me so much to be like that? My toddler.
Oh, that's sweet.
I have a 3-year-old girl, and she is very passionate, and she's still learning how to regulate that little nervous system, and she has big emotions, and she's strong-willed, but she is very good at just moving through her emotions. Like she's gonna like throw that thing, break that thing, and she's gonna like let it out and explode, and then the next thing is like, yeah, but I love you, mommy. Like we're past that. You're still on that. Didn't you
That's
clean that
awesome.
up? Like, why are we still talking about that? Like, I'm already done with that. Like, I expressed myself. I did something that I maybe shouldn't have done. And then there will be times where, like, I could see she's getting frustrated again. And she's like, okay, let me take a deep breath. because she's trying and she's learning, and I'm just like, wow, I can't wait to see how she is at my age with getting the tools so much younger and
Yeah.
learning how to regulate herself and learning like those tools. But she inspires me to forgive myself when maybe I don't react in the best way, or maybe if I give my power to somebody else, because letting someone trigger you and make you angry and reactive and doing stupid things and slashing tires and hitting
Because I've done
people
that.
and getting so angry, you are literally giving that power to somebody else to have over you, to trigger you and to make you react and mess with your emotions and mess with your mind. Like that is a form of giving up your power.
Totally.
It's when you let somebody else control how you react. Like that's all you have is how you react to things. So when you give that to somebody else, you're really letting somebody else in the driver's seat.
100%. And I think that a lot of times when we're triggered, it's very hard. You're so like you're just so you see red, right?
Blinders.
And
Yeah.
I think like a huge part of healing is being able to deep breath, like not react, think before you react in those moments. Because I think that the intense reaction, like the nervous system reaction to these things, is a like reaction of not wanting to lose our power again. And
Yeah.
I think that whether it was childhood trauma or a relationship or whatever, like we don't want these things to happen again. So we think our body's reaction is to like defend, or do the thing to protect ourselves. And, simultaneously we're doing the opposite. And I think we
Yes.
start causing our own trauma. We start causing trauma for other people when we're not regulated. And I think being
Yep.
able to not just be self-aware, because I think like we're going to mess up, we're human, but I think
Yeah.
being self-aware in those moments is what allows you to take your power back. And
Mm-hmm.
also like being communicative. I think that that's another form of taking your power that people don't really want to do because it's very
Yep.
vulnerable. That's something
Mm-hmm.
I like really worked on the last like year and a half. Like I get my feelings hurt all the time. I'm just like so sensitive inside and then I project like tough bitch outside. And so no one would even know that like I'm extremely like in my head being like, what did he mean when he breathed that way? Or like, what did she mean when she just said like, sure? Like I do overthink those things because of like my childhood and the way I grew up. And I think instead of being angry and reacting or assuming the worst in everyone, and then I've decided to just give people the benefit of the doubt. But alongside, I haven't been like scared to communicate how I'm feeling. And I think that it can be really scary to be vulnerable with people and be like, look, like this is how I feel.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it makes sense to you, but like
Yeah.
this is what's going on. And I've been so shocked that like the people in my life have like responded well because in the past they haven't. And I think being able to, take a chance and like not be so scared that everyone's going to act the same way. I think
Yeah.
that when we victim ourselves a lot, we just assume that everyone is exactly like everyone from our past. And it's
Mm.
hard. Like there are bad people, there are good people. There are a lot of good people who do really bad things too. And I think to continue
Yeah.
to live at your elevated self and have the best human experience, you have to be able to put yourself on the line again, again, and again. And that can be really hard.
We get it. You're tired of swiping right and left, searching for something real in the world of online dating. Look no further. We've got you covered with two essential ebooks that will transform your dating life: the 25 conversation starters to cut through the BS when dating, and 25 places to meet quality men in real life ebooks help frustrated women who are tired of dating learn how to date with intention and in alignment with their desired type of lifestyle and goals. We teach you where to find them and then how to actually connect once you do. Each ebook is filled with tried and true methods, whether you're a pro dater or you're just getting back on the market. Time to say goodbye to endless swiping and hello to meeting genuine quality men in real life. Start today and begin your journey toward more authentic connections now at
Yeah.
datingwellaf.com.
There's a quote by Maya Angelou that says, I think it's give yourself permission to trust love one more time and to trust love one more time, because humans are going to human, just like you are going to human. And if you don't want to be a co-conspirator in your own demise, you're going to have to learn to acknowledge, hey, where are the things that are my trigger? And then what is my natural default? Like, how do I naturally respond? For me, I'm a fighter. I used to fight a lot. Like, fighting was my thing. My mother was a fighter. Her mama was a fighter. We just We had to be warriors. And when I took my African ancestry DNA test, it said I was from the Mende tribe, and we actually were fighters. I mean, we were the intellectual fighters. So it really is embedded in my DNA to fight. And so for me, once I started working on and working through my triggers, I know my default is to, okay, we ain't even got to talk. I'm just going to physically hurt you. However, you can't walk around the world just hitting on folks. And granted, I would never start it, but I would for damn sure finish a fight. Whether or not I won, didn't matter. I was going to respond to you. And once I recognized and realized, like, hey, my natural default is to fight. I am going to physically try to disrupt this experience. I started shifting to, okay, what can I do alternatively so that I'm not always putting my physical body in harm's way? Because it's somebody who could beat everybody. There's no one person who, oh no, I can just beat everybody. Even the boxers, there is someone, the highest paid or what is it, the most successful or the undefeated boxers, and they can be defeated by somebody if they're asleep and they get hurt that way. Like, there's always somebody who can one up you. And if I didn't want to live in a world where there was a constant possibility of someone one upping me, I had to shift what that was. Doing so, though, was incredibly hard. And I felt so alone when just trying to figure out, how do I navigate this? Because literally in my bones, in my DNA, everything says to fight. So that feeling alone can be so common, especially when we're experiencing these challenges. And so it is incredibly easy to just isolate, especially because I'm an introvert. I like being alone. I find great joy in it. So because it's easy to isolate in an effort to, like, not want to feel like a burden, or to let people know, like you were saying, communicate the fact that you're feeling this way or having these challenges. You don't want to feel like a burden, but it's incredibly important that you have a community around you. So how would you suggest we start to build a tribe when we are in our lowest moments so that we can navigate through those tough things?
Yeah, it's so hard because I feel like as you get older, you have to kind of grieve with the fact that you may not have a lot of people in your tribe. And I think that's hard as like an adult, especially as a woman too, because to your point earlier, like I'm a girl's girl too. And the reality is that like not a lot of women are that way. There are like a great group, like you saw like 20 women the other day at the podcast party who were great and amazing. But like I think there's a lot, and this is a total separate conversation, but there's a lot of powerless moments that have happened to women that have allowed us to just gang up on each other and like be so competitive towards each other. So I think unfortunately, like it can be hard to find a good group of women or like a good tribe to like surround yourself with. But I think that you have to be patient and you have to be willing to be in solitude. And I think that is like the hardest thing to do for people, especially to your point in the healing journey. Like it's work. It's like not like doing the work is not like just a phrase. Like it is work. You're actually having to rewire habits and, to your point, deep rooted patterns to live a more elevated self. Like that is active thinking. Like I was telling someone the other day, like when I'm triggered, yes, like when I'm triggered, I have to literally in my head, like walk myself through like, you want to react this way? You're not going to do that because that's not who you are. How are you going to react now? Take a breath. Like it's actual like physical work to be able to rewrite these patterns. And so I think there is an amount of solitude that needs to happen too in the healing journey. You need to be able to sit alone with yourself. You can't rely on others, to our point earlier, to come save you and to be your cushion or whatever. And I think when you do elevate to that like highest version of yourself and you're actively trying to do so, the right people do come in. And I believe that. I spent a lot of my life being lonely in my childhood, in high school, in college. And I think I thought it was like based in the fact that like I am just not good enough and like no one likes me. So like I don't have anyone. And then I started to realize that like it was actually my fault that I didn't have anyone, and that my bad habits because of what I had been through and all this, reaction and the way I interacted with people was now like my responsibility. So I think I needed to be in solitude to like actually like lean into and become like the highest version of myself so that the right people could come into my life. But it's hard. I mean, I don't think there's like a recipe to like finding like people. I think you just need to like act the way and you want to be treated. I say that to people all the time. Like, act and react the way you want people to act and react to you, and then the right people will come around.
For sure. And focusing more on the quality versus the quantity. Like
Yes.
I one time was looking back at pictures of my 21st birthday party. Alicia was there. And I'm 33 now. I'll be 34 in July. And it was my 21st birthday. And I think there were like 40 people at my
Wow.
and it was like an extravaganza. Like we went to some restaurant and then we were like, it ended up just growing into this like big shebang. And we had ended up having like the whole back room and we were dancing on tables. We were breaking plates because it was like a Greek restaurant. And then I had like this beautiful hotel suite on the water on South Beach. And then I like snuck everyone into the room and we had a party in the room. Like it was a time. And I'm looking back at these pictures like, I don't even talk to like a third of these people anymore. And then fast forward to from 21 to my 30th birthday, it was 12 of us,
Yeah.
including my now husband, right? And Alicia was there too. So it's just like there are some people that you knew like earlier in your healing journey that can come
Mhm.
with you. We've been blessed enough to be kind of our lives and our souls are so intertwined that like we are meant to do this work together. So I love that. And if you have friends that are like that, like lean on them and you have to be vulnerable and be open because sometimes you're assuming someone's going to react or be a certain way. And like you said, you've experienced that people react differently. You're like, okay, you do understand, or oh, wow, you do have empathy for me. So, sometimes not writing people off or just assuming what they're going to say or what they're going to think about you, giving them the opportunity and then knowing that you're strong enough to withstand whatever they may throw at you. Hopefully it's
Yeah.
nothing physical, but
Yeah.
as long as like, you can handle their response for the most part, and then you can decide from there where you want them in your life and how you want to keep them close, or do they need to kind of stay out on the porch? Like you can decide what role they get to play in your life. But I definitely would, my answer to that question is always to, focus on the quality. Don't focus on having, 25 girlfriends. Like that's not a thing. If you're really trying to go deep, you have to, be okay with the small circle you have, because that small circle can be so powerful, but you do
Yeah.
have to be selective and intentional with who you let in.
Yeah, I mean, I think a huge part of healing and growing up and wanting to live at your most elevated self is having to make the hard choices and hard decisions too, and in so many different realms. But in regards to like people, I think it can be like really devastating sometimes having to like move past people. And like I feel like especially in your like late 20s this starts to happen. I'm 27, and like I feel like I've had like really close girlfriends where I kind of have to be like I have to put some distance because they're not growing with me. And it becomes incredibly frustrating sometimes being around people who you feel aren't supporting you in the ways you need to be supported and also growing with you. So I think like another way to take your power back, especially when it comes to, healing and wanting to move into the highest version of yourself, is like not being scared to make the hard choices. And sometimes those are going to be really uncomfortable. And most of the time, they're going to be really uncomfortable, but you have to do it for the sake of being comfortable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's always so interesting when you have to make those tough choices. The feeling afterwards many times is, yes, grief, because you now have to grieve that person. But there's also a sense of relief because it's like, okay, I really do mean what I say when I say I'm growing this time. And that will
Yeah.
require me to do something different.
Yeah. I think
Absolutely.
that going back to the question of the episode, like, what's a way you can step into your power? Like, everything for me comes back to like just not being scared to like look in the mirror and do everything you can to be the best version of yourself. I think that's the only way to
Yeah.
take back your power when you have a series. One, two, three. I would argue that everybody has like a series of moments in their life where they've been made to feel powerless that affect the way we are as humans and adults now. And I think I would say the biggest way and the first step to taking your power back is you have to be able to make the hard choice. And usually that hard choice is being very self-aware. And a lot of people are scared to do that. And I think that comes in with relationships, with the job, with, you know, starting the business, with making like new friends and connections, with, you know, everything. It all goes back to honoring yourself. And a lot of times we don't.
And what does that look like for you? Like, when do you feel the most powerful? Like, when is your moment you're just like, oh, I'm that bitch. Like, I feel
Yeah.
like I can do anything. Like, what are some of those moments, or when does that feeling come up for you? You realize when you feel the most powerful.
I think like firstly, like the podcast has given me like so much healing. So I think like if you can pinpoint like what you struggle with the most. So like for me, like a huge part of healing was like getting out of the victim mentality of like, why did this happen to me in my life? Like, why did I have to grow up in this chaotic home and not have this normal family and like be treated this way? And why did this have to happen to me? And I think we were reading, I have a book club with my friends, and we were reading the book Siddhartha, which is like this very old, like almost like parable like type book, but it's essentially a metaphor for the healing journey. And something that I always say that was mentioned in the book is like wisdom comes with experience, not with knowledge. Like you can be the smartest person, but like wisdom comes with experience. And so I think like making that shift to like, I would not be here doing what I do. I would not have this company. I would not have this passion for having these conversations if I didn't go through the things I did, has been
Mhm.
like a huge way for me to step into my power. So if you can pinpoint like what is something that gets you into victim mode, like what oppositely is on the other side of that coin, like focus on that. I think
Mhm.
that makes me feel like the most powerful person ever. I feel like I'm truly taking my trauma to triumph. I think
Yeah.
that doing things that just like genuinely make me feel happy. I think a lot of times when you've been made out to feel powerless, we can like overcompensate in a lot of ways. I think for me, it's like me constantly forcing myself into work, just like working, working, working. And I think
Yeah.
actually like giving myself grace and like like a reward that shouldn't be a reward, and like taking time to just like go on a walk, like do things that make me happy, go antique shopping. Like it doesn't have to be so serious all the time. I think that
Yeah.
makes me powerful, because I think we sell ourselves, especially as women, that like we need to be doing, doing, doing and accomplishing to feel powerful. And I think
Yep.
oppositely, like if you can lean out of that and actually feel elevated while you're not doing anything, like that is a huge way to feel powerful. And I think just being able to like have these conversations with people without fear also makes me feel like a bad bitch.
Yeah.
Like when I'm willing to like ask someone a question about something real in person, or if I feel like someone's like kind of bullshitting me, I like asking a question like, well, what do you mean by that? Like, or what do you mean
Mhm.
when you say this? Or like, tell me more about your story. It makes me feel like, wow, like I'm really leaning into my power and like having authentic
Yeah.
conversations instead of like watering myself down and like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's so much power, especially if I feel like for women, there's so much power in the being as opposed to the doing all the
yeah.
time. It's just like, how are you showing up for yourself? Like, I know for me, I feel very powerful when I'm keeping promises to myself.
oh,
Like when
yeah,
I'm
Mhm.
doing what I say I was gonna do, like I have
Mhm.
a procrastination issue, which makes me feel very powerless because I like will put things off and put things off and put things off. And then when I do it, I'm like, oh, I can do that. Like, why
yeah,
didn't I do it a week ago? Like,
no,
because it's
totally.
just like a mental block that will come up, and it feels like I get frustrated and I feel like, oh my God, and you feel incapable. And then
Yeah.
when you start keeping those small promises to yourself and you start building those good habits, even just that can make you feel powerful, and just being who you say that you want to be. Like
Totally.
that is a very big way when you feel like you had to be that way because that's how you've always been, or that's how your mom was or your grandma was, and you're like, nah, I'm gonna be like this, and making those
Yeah.
choices and decisions to just show up as her.
Yep.
That is just like
Totally.
that bitch energy all day.
Well, and it builds
I love it.
confidence. And I think like Ed Milet always says, like keeping the promises to ourselves is what like builds confidence. And I
Mhm.
think that and I know it's like very broad, I'm like trying to give specific, but I think for me, when I do things against my conscience, like that is the most powerless, like I
Yeah.
feel like every single time I make a decision, like against my conscience and against my aligned self, like it's
Mhm.
the opposite. And I think that's the
Yeah.
core of like depression and anxiety, at least it was for me. Like I was denying my conscience so much that I just felt like
Yeah.
so powerless. And I think a
Mhm.
way that you can like step into your power every day is like do not do things that compromise who you are, what your conscience is saying, and like what you believe as a person, your values,
Mm.
small things. Like to your point, like I also procrastinate. And maybe it's an entrepreneur thing. I don't know. We're so overwhelmed. There's so much to do. But I think like in
Listen
small, there's
to-
so much to do all the time. I need an assistant so bad. But like I think keeping the promises to ourselves and like or staying on task, like that is like a core value of mine. And when I don't
Yeah.
do it, it makes me feel like shit. Or like
Yep.
when you know, I don't know, like if someone says something that I'm like, that was disrespectful, and I don't like I don't know, leave the situation, calmly express how that makes me feel.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, I'm not gonna like go off, but I think being like, what do you mean by that? Like, let's have a conversation. Like, what do you mean by that? Like, I
Let's
don't actually
explore.
say, yeah, let's explore because I think past also fighter, but like with words, like I would just like go off. And this is where it goes
Yeah.
back to like, you know, being able to like rewire, be calm, not react. But I think like when I sometimes leaned so far the other way that
Mhm.
I was avoidant and like I didn't want to act like myself, like my old self. So I
Yeah.
almost pendulum swinged too hard. And I
Mhm.
found myself denying my conscience again because I was like,
Mhm.
I'm not, having these conversations. I'm not like sticking up for myself. I'm not like expressing my
Yeah.
values. So I think
Mhm.
when say something, speak up, do the things, honor yourself, like that's when you're
Yeah.
going to feel the most powerful.
I love it. I have truly enjoyed this conversation, and I want to make sure that before we let you go, because I know we went all the way into the deep end, y'all. So we want to bring you out a little bit with these rapid fire questions. Okay,
Okay.
Han, you cannot think too long about these rapid fire. We're gonna ask them. You have to answer. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So let's get started. You ready?
I'm scared, but yes.
What would you say is the biggest risk you've ever taken?
Starting the podcast for
Okay,
sure.
I love it. I can
Yeah,
understand.
vulnerability. It's because of vulnerability. Do you want explanation too?
You
Just because of
can. I mean, listen, live your
yeah,
best life.
yeah, just because of vulnerability. I think I am very open. I love having these conversations, but I think a podcast makes you go even deeper. You can't stay surface level. You can't glaze over the hard topics. You actually have to
Yeah.
get into your guys' point. And so I think like it's very vulnerable space. People who know me are listening to. And so definitely one of the biggest risks I've taken.
Speaking of the people who do know you, tell us something that most people don't know about you.
I was a musical theater kid. So my
Mm.
close friends, like best friends, know that I play piano and sing, but I did like theater my entire childhood and I'm obsessed. I watch Phantom of the Opera like a lot and listen to it more.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
love that. So then in that, and you said only your close friends know. So then who would you like to be stranded on a desert island with?
There's so
Okay,
many amazing women. Like I'm trying to
Just
think
the
of
one. Just the first one that pops into your head. Who do you want to be stranded on a desert island with? The first person.
um okay, this is so random, but Dr. Caroline Leaf, her book no, this is so specific. So when I started my healing journey, I think that was like the first real self-help book I read about rewiring the brain to like regulate your nervous system. And it was really impactful for me. It was the first time I understood why I reacted the way I did. And she's really
Mhm.
cool. You guys should follow her on Instagram. She's very
Dr. Caroline Leaf. Okay.
yeah. I mean,
Okay.
she may not be able to get us off the island, but at least like she'll
You would
be
have
able to
something to do. You'd be
she'll
inspired.
therapize me. No, she'll just be my therapist the
The
entire time
whole
we're on.
time. So
I
that
will
by the time you're saved, you'll be like your optimal self.
I'm like stranded, but at least I'm elevating to the highest version of myself. I've turned my strandedness to a retreat.
Genius.
I love
I
that.
love it. That's a great answer. So, Han, where can our listeners stay connected with you and your podcast? And where can they also, tap into your healing journey with you?
Yeah. So my Instagram is at how Han sees it. And it's just all unapologetic fashion, lifestyle content. So that's like the whole nine there. And then for the healing journey, mental health, entrepreneurship, that's the podcast. It's how I see it, the pod on Instagram and on Apple and Spotify. But yeah.
Awesome. You can follow us at Triggered AFPC on Instagram. You can go to triggeredafpodcast.com. You can follow me at the Danny Bordeaux, Bourdeau on Instagram. And you can also go to triggeredafevents.com to see when we're coming to a city near you so that we can connect and continue all this healing and powerful conversation in person.
Yes,
Yay.
yes.
Thank you
And
for
you can
having
stay
me.
Of course, of course. And make sure you stay connected with me all over at Alicia Reese. Y'all know my parents got hella excited. I was their firstborn. It's not my fault. It's spelled Alechia, last name Reese, Reese. I look forward to just staying deeply connected with you all. We are loving these conversations. Let us know, send us a DM, let us know how we can further help you and what topics that you may want to hear from us. And also, too, we thank you seriously for joining us, not only this week, but every single week on the Triggered AF podcast. Make sure that you're subscribed on Apple Podcasts and on YouTube because we are a good time. Okay. Can't wait to see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.